So what do you do when the host and the guest of one of your two favorite endurance podcasts sort of misses the boat a little bit on a big topic that you deal with all the time? And they're maybe a little bit of an expert in it. You make a video and you hope that it reaches people so that they're clear on what's happening. So what are my two favorite podcasts? First one is Jason Koop's Koopcast. Man, that guy really gets shit wrong. He's just smart and he's on it and he's good at what he does. And the other is Sean Bearden's Science of Ultra, another incredibly smart guy. It's on a little bit of a hiatus, which means I've been listening to a whole lot of Jason Koop's stuff. And in episode 91 and 92, they talked about GI issues with Jamie Pugh and Kyle Smith. And they missed some things with FODMAP that I would like to clear up for them and maybe you if you listen to that. So I deal with FODMAP. I'm also a dietitian. You can see I'm a chef and I'm getting a PhD out here in New Zealand in sports, human performance, right? So kind of in all of the same stuff. And my practice is mostly all endurance athletes. I help design hydration and strategy plans for people doing ultra stuff. And FODMAP is a big issue. Now, what the hell is FODMAP? FODMAP is the fermentable oligosaccharide, disaccharide, monosaccharide, and polyols. And within that big ass name, there are 6 sugars that when someone eats them, they may not digest. So it's kind of a malabsorption issue. And those sugars go into the gut and they get fermented by the bacteria. And when you think about fermentation, what you get is gas. The thing with gas normally is that it's healthy and you get some fun, it's tooty and things are good. And that's a good sign of a healthy GI system. But with FODMAP, it's not. It's gassiness. It's really bad bloating. It's painful. The gas is really pretty foul. And you really don't want to be around other people or even yourself because you're kind of gross. And if you're an endurance athlete and you're having issues with training and running and your events because of FODMAP, it's not really a nothing burger. It helps to understand how to screen for this and what foods are real triggers. So one of the things that caught me was Kyle Smith as an RD. But man, I still think, Kyle, you should have said, I don't know everything about it. I don't really practice in it, because it was evident when he stuck on lactose and gluten as the two major causes. And eliminating those was bad because you need all these carbs. Yeah, okay. Let me start with this one. So let me share this with you and maybe it'll help everybody understand a little bit better the importance of FODMAP and where to really look for it. FODMAP is not just gluten and it's not just lactose. Yes, they are part of the FODMAPs, but while they're the usual suspects, they're not usually the problem. So first, foods like watermelon, apples, peaches, all your stone fruits actually, cherries, peaches, plums, butternut squash, asparagus, right? Mushrooms, those are really big FODMAP issues. Those are the suspects. Those are the ones causing the problem. So let me give you a real quick example of how this typically works out with an individual. Is they eat pizza and they get all this stuff on their pizza and they're like, I'm really gassy and bloated, and everybody loves to hate on cheese. So now they stop eating cheese because that's got to be the problem, clearly. They eat their pizza, get the same stuff, no cheese this time, and they're still gassy. Fuck, it's got to be the gluten. Okay, so now they get gluten-free pizza with no dairy cheese and they get all the same toppings. It doesn't really solve the problem. Maybe the pizza is a little less enjoyable, so they eat less of it. And so the problems are maybe a little bit lessened, but doesn't go away completely. It turns out it was the mushrooms on the pizza, or the bell peppers, or the onions and the garlic. Those are all FODMAPs. Beets are FODMAPs. The list of FODMAPs is immense. And they can oftentimes be the problem while it has nothing to do with gluten and dairy or lactose for sweetening. So there's this whole group of really healthy plant-based fruits, vegetable foods that are FODMAPs. And they can be causing the problem, for one. Number two, how to screen. So one of the things that I would recommend anybody do is to ask yourself, and even if you're a coach, ask your athlete who's having GI distress, are you gassy and bloated and like farty, like a lot of flatulence, more than once or twice a week? And when you say like, yeah, kind of like, are you bloated? Is it like push out? Is it hurt? Or is it really bad gas? Like you could fill a balloon in one fart kind of thing and it's just nonstop for a long time. Like those are real questions. Look, we're all fucking adults and we got to get shit done, literally, right? So you just ask. I'm a dietitian. I talk about menstrual cycles and bowel movements all the time. It's not a big deal. As a coach, if you've got athletes with issues you need to ask, because if they do have this type of problem frequently, then they are probably a very good candidate for a FODMAP type intervention to see if it's a problem. And if they don't, and they say, no, I have normal kind of gas once or twice a week, not really bloated, it's not really gross, then FODMAP isn't an intervention. And if they're running into GI issues during training, then it's probably something else as the root. And look, Jason, you're a super smart dude. You would have already figured it out and you've moved on. So to say it's a nothing burger, yep, for some people it may be because they're not FODMAP sensitive, but it's an easy way to screen. It's also not just lactose and gluten. Many other foods cause the problem. The other thing is the nuance of it. So the nuance of FODMAP is, while it's not complex, it's kind of a pain in the ass because it's amounts. So let me give you another example. For me, I can't eat a whole apple. So FODMAPs for me at fructose, man, I just gassy, it's gross. And so I can eat half an apple, but I can't eat a whole apple. So let's say my friend over here has FODMAP too, she can eat a whole apple, right? But she can't touch asparagus. But I can eat asparagus and have no problems. So it's an amount. But what happens if I have, I can eat half an apple, that's cool, but then an hour later I go get another fruit that's got fructose, and then I get really gassy. Is it the fruit I just ate, or was it the combination of the two adding to a dose-dependent thing? That's the real problem with FODMAP, because we tend to wipe out things completely without actually understanding that we can eat some of it, but we got to be careful how we layer those foods on. And I'm a big proponent of eating like 80% plants, or being a vegan that eats a little bit of meat. Makes no sense, but it gets the point across, right? And so I eat a ton of plants. And so when I'm throwing all these things into my salad and my meal, it's really easy to layer a whole bunch of FODMAPs on top of one another and get more doses than I need and get super confused about what it was that caused the problem to begin with. Now, I've been living with this for a while, and as a dietitian, I practice it as part of my practice, so it's definitely in my scope of expertise. So I can actually choose when I want to feel bad and load up on FODMAPs and when I want to stay away from them. And if you want to do that on your own, and if you want to counsel people to do that on their own, I'm not a big fan of DIY, but look, man, not everybody wants to pay for somebody to help them out. I get it. So go to your app store and look up Monash and get the FODMAP app. It's going to be the best $9 you've ever spent. And here's the thing, very simple. You create a grocery list, that's all green foods. If it's red, you don't even buy it. And for 7 to 10 days, you just eat green. That's a lot of foods. It's better to look at foods from the way of what can you eat versus what you can't eat. And if you get some improvement in your gassiness and your bloating and the frequency, okay, man, then we need to just continue with that. And you probably at that point should look for some help so that you can learn how to add back in the foods and layer and kind of just navigate that complexity of the dose dependency of these sugars. And if you want to do it all on yourself, then you just need to start adding foods back in within a particular sugar type and see which one affects you, but you only add one and then you increase the amount to see what's the problem and what dose is it that does it for you. So did they get FODMAP a little bit wrong? Yeah, I think they were right in their assessment, but they were wrong in the details specifically. Can it mean nothing for somebody? Yes, it can. Can it be screened for pretty quickly? Sure, it sure can. And if you do have malabsorption, it will be a really big deal. And the very last thing, excuse me, that I work with all the athletes that I work with if they have a FODMAP, and actually even athletes who don't have FODMAP, it's still kind of the same, is leading up to a race. Like there is a window. If you have FODMAP, it tends to stretch the days out. But 2 to 3 days, 48 to 72 hours before an event, you need to change your diet, right? Because that stuff, when you eat food, man, your stomach clears out in 1, 2, 3 hours, no problem. But your intestine stuff sits in there for a few days. So something you've eaten a couple days ago can absolutely impact you during an event or during a big training day. And what makes it really hard when that happens is this. Is let's say you've eaten something that your body doesn't agree with, and then you got a huge training day, right? And you've paid for this coach and you're doing all these things, and you go out and your stomach is like, oh, I'm fucked. And you got to think, was it the gels I ate? Was it the food I had? Was it the hydration mix I did? Did I drink too much? No, maybe it was the food you had 48 hours ago, all right? And so to make things a little less complicated, to remove some of the variables, it's a really good strategy. All right, so anyway, into this, if you stuck with me, podcast, Jason Koopcast, you want to listen to it, man. The guy gets it right almost all the time. Another one's Sean Beard and Science of Ultra. I love that guy. And of course, you can always follow me or message me on Instagram. This is what I do for a living. Super fun endurance fueling and hydration blends. All right, later.